Welcome to the Tamarind Learning Podcast, where host Dr. Kirby Ross-Plock speaks with experts on many topics relevant in the ultra-high net worth family wealth management space. Kirby is author of several books, including The Complete Family Office Handbook, and shares her expertise consulting with families and family offices. Kirby is also the founder of Tamarind Learning, an online wealth education platform that develops practical, foundational learning programs for beneficiaries to help them prepare for responsible stewardship of wealth.
Welcome to the Tamarind Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirby Ross-Plock, and today we have two very special guests and two very good friends. We have Dr. Stephen Goldbart and Joan DeFuria. So both of these wonderful guests are super well-heeled experts in family wealth, in legacy wealth, and all things organizational development. So both of these guests are incredible. Money, Meaning, and Choices is an incredible practice that they've developed. And Joan, she's known for having done so many incredible things. Maybe most people don't know that she actually has worked 18 years with many businesses. She's had a pretty incredible career, commodities. And so she actually is pretty technical in her background and her training, Westinghouse, among others, General Electric, Reynolds Aluminum. So Joan is actually a jack of many trades, and Stephen too, clinical psychologist by training, but again, 30 years of professional experience. So both of them, partners in crime, have done some extraordinary work over the years. And it's just incredible to have them on the podcast today. So welcome.
Welcome. Thank you so much.
Gosh, what a pleasure, Kirby.
So we're excited because we are going to be talking about just a wonderful book that they have co-authored. And it's a real contribution to our space because this book, which I'm about to bring up and share right now. So this beautiful book is the 10 by 10 Learning Roadmap, Advancing Flourishing in Families of Wealth. So Stephen and Stacey Allred and Joan collaborated on this incredible book. And it's really this incredible guide that does exactly that. It provides roadmaps for families, affluent families, enterprising families, to figure out at different ages and stages, what do not just young people, not just rising gen and teenagers, but everybody of the whole family, what do you need to know? What skills, what technical and non-technical things are important for family members to be understanding at different ages and stages. So I don't need to tell you about it. I want them to tell us more about this incredible book. And so, Joan and Stephen, what inspired you to write this?
Well, thank you so much again, Kirby, for having us on your show. It's really a pleasure. So let me start by saying that over the years, we've come to understand that one way or the other, significant financial capital will have an impact on each and every member of a family. As a client of ours said, financial wealth is like rocket fuel, but where will it take you? So we've seen how financial abundance can help build well-being and self-esteem or undermine it and has the potential for languishing. So at the very beginning of the pandemic, Stacey, Joan, and I took some time to reflect on our years of experience, taking a fresh look at how we can best help our clients. And we thought about how can we maximize the benefits and minimize the risks of their money? And importantly, how can we help them learn and grow to be the best they can be as individuals and as a family? Now, our initial focus was on the creation of a very sophisticated governance tool. But we had learned, and in our discussions came to the understanding that it really didn't matter how brilliantly governance or estate planning was created if family members were not actively engaged or didn't have the specific skills for sustainable outcomes. We also knew from research on families of wealth that the successful family is the learning family. But what is most important to learn? I think you alluded to this. What are the skills that people need to learn? Let me bring up an example here. Let's think about Sue. She's 25 years old. She's in the first few years of her career after college. And she wanted to know how she could best make use of family wealth in support of her lifestyle But she was worried about the ways in which that family money might undermine her own motivation to get ahead. She wanted to be self-sufficient and feel successful in her own right. Well, let's take somebody at the other end of the age spectrum, Antonio, a 65-year-old business owner who had just sold his business after building it over 30 years and was saying, what's next? All I know is the lifestyle I've had, but I have these opportunities now. So we came to see that questions like these required a broad lifespan model, a model that defines the key skills at each major life stage, takes into account the differing strengths and life choices of each individual family member, and provides a tool that can be readily used to educate and mentor all the generations. So the three of us took on the audacious task of building a framework to help family members of virtually all ages from 5 to 100 determine the skills they want to learn to develop determine the skills they want to develop to effectively integrate family wealth. In so doing, in this audacious experience, we brought together advanced thinking in psychology, the cognitive sciences, estate planning, research on wealthy families, along with our own professional experiences to create what we chose to call the 10 by 10 Learning Roadmap. The 10 by 10 is a comprehensive educational tool for all ages, helping family members gain clarity on their goals and take actions that will help them thrive and be connected as a family.
So I'd like to take a moment here to bring this to life and show you the chart, which is comprised of 10 core competencies and 10 life stages, ages 5 to 100. So Kirby, if you wouldn't mind showing the chart, I'd like to take you through a case study. Okay. So as you can see by this chart, there are 10 stages of life, ages 5 to 100. So if you were at age 45 years old, you'd be in stage 7, middle adulthood. So just take a minute to look at this chart. Look at where you are in this chart and what your stage is. You can see here the 10 competencies are a specific set of skills that support the growth of emotionally intelligent, financially effective, and self-sufficient family members of all ages. The 10 by 10 is comprised of 5 external competencies and 5 internal competencies. The internal competencies are the skills necessary for the development of a person who has a solid sense of character. That special combination of emotional intelligence, social engagement, responsibility, and wellness. And these include emotional skills, social skills, learning and growth mindset, responsibility and accountability, and health and well-being. As you can see from this chart, the external competencies are the skills necessary for the development of being a capable, educated person who gets things done. That's the knowledge and skills and credentials that we all acquire over time. These include financial skills, wealth and life planning, stewardship, governance skills, philanthropy skills, and entrepreneurial enterprise skills. So in short, the internal competencies are who we are in the world. The external competencies are what we do. So if you remember Sue, that Stephen talked about, who wanted to learn how to best use, but not overuse her family money for her lifestyle, we asked her to review the competency chart for age 25, which is stage 4, emerging adulthood. And by the way, that includes approximately 40 learning activities at every stage. So using this chart, Sue chose her 3 priority learning activities, which by the way, took her about 20 minutes. That's the beauty, 20 minutes, and then moved on to build action plans, working with her advisor. So think of the 10 by 10 as both a model and a tool to build action plans. It provides choices of learning activities at each and every life stage across all 10 competencies. So our 10 by 10 learning roadmap invites every family member to look at where they are now, what's possible, where they could go, and choose what they want to learn. As one advisor said, it's, quote, a discovery process on steroids that is fun, time efficient, and thought-provoking.
I love this graphic. It's so concise and it really helps sort of give you the full look and feel of like all the different ages and stages that you cover. And it does make you curious to dive in and want to know what are those 40 activities in all of these different age groups, because I'm sure that starts to unlock, right? what those external competencies and internal competencies are to really help that age and stage grow and develop appropriately to build that self at that point in time, right?
Yes.
In
Yes,
fact,
indeed.
Kirby, I would just want to add to what you're saying. One of the things that we found so interesting is we've been testing this for 2 years now, is that people see opportunities they couldn't have thought about or seen, and they say, "I never thought of that." So it's just a roadmap of opportunities that we don't often consider, given that we're busy, but the opportunities are specific for someone's age and stage, and that's what makes it so kind of luxurious, I guess.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that and when you use this, as we'll talk about in a minute, you're choosing what you want to learn. It's not like, oh, I have to learn all this stuff. You're going to pick the learning activities you want to choose based upon the competencies that you want to elevate or exercise. So it's self-authored, which is a very important part of our approach.
That's great, because then people will gravitate to the things that attract them and interest them. And that's so important, because if there's not a hook, we often know that the spoonful of sugar approach works, but it doesn't really work if you're forced to take the medicine and you don't like the medicine and you really don't want to do it. So
Exactly.
So let's jump in and talk more. I want to learn more about how this whole process works and where we go from here. So what would happen? I mean, ideally, like, so you've written this book, we have these 10 competencies, you've described them a little bit at a high level. Let's talk about how to use this roadmap, Stephen. How should families, leaders, and individual family members make use of this tool?
Great. So let's talk about how a person uses the 10 by 10. So I'd like you to imagine 4 steps. The first step is select your life stage and read the charts for your life stage. Simple enough. Sue is stage 4, as you'll see in a minute. She selected that life stage and then read through her charts. And that's the second step, is to read through your charts. As Joan mentioned, there's 40 approximate learning activity choices per stage. Pick your top 3. And those first 2 steps typically take 20 to 30 minutes. Then, third step, build an action plan for each chosen activity for the next quarter, or 2 at most. Simple, doable action plans. And finally, the fourth step, review and advance the action plan on a quarterly basis. So let's bring this to life by taking a look at Sue, our 25-year-old. Great. So Sue was at that transition point, emerging adulthood, which is really launching from the family home through college into the world. And as I mentioned earlier, she really wanted to be able to do that with a degree of independence, but also be able to use some of the benefits of family wealth. And she picked these 3 particular learning activities. The first had to do with financial skills. She felt, I should really have some kind of plan upon that balances my saving and spending, working on that. The second was in emotional skills. She wanted to learn more about what it means to come from a wealthy family and now be in the real world, gaining some understanding of limitations and opportunities of wealth. And the third one, which also was in the domain of emotional skills, to develop self-confidence and a sense of personal agency to live independently from her parents, who may still be providing emotional support. And indeed, she still was at home. She was on a job, but still was at home. So those were the 3 activities she picked. And briefly, I'll share the action plan she worked out with her advisor. The first had to do with building a budget. She thought it'd be a great idea to build a budget for the next year of her life, balancing her spending and saving. The second, around wealth identity, she and her advisor talked about listening to some podcasts on the matter, as well as finding a wealth psychologist to help her just think through what this all means. And the third one, developing self-confidence, she decided really it was time to move from her parents' home to her own apartment. And she wanted to pick an apartment that was based upon what she could afford from her own earnings, so that her lifestyle, her day-to-day expenses would be from her earnings, but she felt it was fine to use family money for vacations or special events. And that's what she said, let me try this for a year and see how it feels. So that's a very simple, straightforward example of how this works.
Stephen, I want to just add something here that we haven't mentioned, which is important, which is for every life stage, Kirby, we have what we call an overview chart. So let me bring to life the overview chart just so you get a sense of how this works for Sue, which is in stage 4, emerging adulthood. There are challenges, key takeaways, and what's important in every overview chart. So if you were to read yours, Kirby, you would be looking at these things. Sue looked at this. Her challenges at this age, and Annie's challenges at this age of development, was about self-confidence, humility, and independence. And you can hear what Stephen brought up. The key takeaways are about who am I as a member of a wealthy family, learning skills to be emotionally and financially self-sufficient, and having key social and professional relationships. And the last challenge of this, the last overview is the question of what's important at this stage in life. And at this stage, it's about being responsible, having emotional self-management, and also looking at vocation. And so if you hear what Stephen put together, it's directly in line with these overviews. So I want to make sure the audience knows that every stage will have an overview chart. It's this kind of the Cliff Notes version of what's important at this time in their life.
And I can tell you've mapped this to developmental psychology. So this is all like not just pie in the sky. This is all mapping right to
Absolutely. And when I mentioned earlier that we brought together thinking from psychology, we brought together from the literature on adult development and child development. All the stage names actually come from the literature. We didn't invent them, and they're all referenced in the book. And it's one of the few examples where the entire spectrum of life stages is put together and described, keeping in mind current research. So yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. It was a piece of work and something we feel really good about.
I think it's brilliant too that you really do cover the spectrum, and I'm appreciative we're covering emerging adulthood, and I know you've really taken the time to thoughtfully cover particularly the aging adulthood elements, because I just had a conversation over the weekend with some of my peers, and we are in that more aging adulthood time of life, and talking about the sandwich generation and how many of us are taking care of more elderly parents. And I think there is a lot of need for help and support, caring for and understanding what are those activities, what are those things that we need to care for, those kinds of developmental issues. And I think that is something that's really helpful to those advisors out there. So not to go off point, but again, I really want to thank you for taking the time to add that to your book.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's part of our underlying philosophy, which also comes from our understanding of what the successful family is, the learning family. That should also be added on, a learning family at every stage of life, so that mom and dad, all the different generations within any family system are all learning and advancing in their own way along their own path. So there's this big focus on next gen, the rising gen in our space, but in the most successful families, every generation is making use of the opportunity to learn and grow and advance.
And also, when you say case in point, Kirby, it's what you mentioned is really important, because what the stages allow us to do is it actually normalizes development. And in fact, one unexpected learning that we had was the fact that when parents come to us and they're concerned about their teenage who's not doing their homework or might be depressed or is socially active in a way they're not happy about, when we let the parents look at that stage of their teenager or young adult, it normalizes their development. So they get to say, okay, my child isn't really off the charts here. My child is in normal development. My work is, how do I deal with that? And when do I know it's too extreme? But it normalizes because it's, as Stephen said, it's based on child development, adult development theories, cognitive development, neuro studies, etc.
Well, maybe we need to have our teenage and young adults and middle adults read the later stages of us.
Indeed.
No, we are normal too, because
Exactly.
maybe
I
they
like
just
that.
don't
Well,
know.
what you're
Thank
talking
you,
about is
Kirby.
it's an offshoot that we can go on forever. But basically, like in our culture, everyone's so focused on the moment and then just where they are
Yeah.
that they're not really understanding, looking at the other folks, whether they're older or younger, and being able to really get where they're at. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's really an important part. So I know I wanted to share one more example of somebody who's older.
Yeah.
So I'm going to come back to that gentleman, Antonio, the business owner in transition I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
If you don't mind putting him up.
Yeah.
He's married, has adult children. They're all launched. He had just completed the sale of his business when we encountered him. And he told us, it was time to get his adult children more involved in understanding family wealth. And he wanted to figure out what he wanted to do in his life. So he's in stage 8, which is late adulthood, or the liberation stage. This stage is about moving from have to want to in life decisions, exploring newfound freedoms of not needing to work or raise children full time. It's the gateway to the senior years, coming to terms with the meaning and impact of aging. It's the stage that marks the shift to an attitude of, if not now, when? So what you're seeing here are the priorities he picked. He picked financial skills, and under that, updating investment philosophy and finding new balance between long-term security and out-of-the-box opportunities. Learning and growth mindset. This was the part of him, if not now, when, like some more experimentation, innovation, and risk-taking. And responsibility and accountability. And I'll focus a bit more on this third one, because this competency involves a realization about the realities of mortality, leading to a desire to make more mindful decisions and take actions. So it means reviewing and perhaps changing some long-term decisions about distributions to family or to charity, and passing on life stories and life lessons. So with these 3 chosen activities, Antonio sat down with his advisor, and they worked together on implementing an action plan, and included development of family governance about distributions. They had some sketchy ideas before, but at this point, he really wanted to sit down and think through that more clearly. He wanted to do a review of his estate plan in mind of where he is at now in life. And he told us it was very emotionally important to him. He wanted to get the rising generation more involved in philanthropy, exploring hands-on ways, such as site visits, that could involve the whole family. So you can see that his choices and where he's at in life produces very different learning activities and very different outcomes, as it should be. So I hope that gives you some sense of the range here. We have a stage 4 and a stage 8, very different stages of life. And I also hope it conveys that using this tool, it's pretty easy. You're reading a few charts, you're making a few choices, and you're going with what you want to do. And that's really important, is that we're not telling people, oh, you ought to do that. We're saying, here's the activities, you choose it. So the motivation to actually get on a learning journey and stay on the learning journey is there. Because we're interested in it being a journey, not a one-stop shopping experience.
Yeah.
One thing that we found also helped, I want to add this, one thing we found that also helped, especially with the younger generation or the sandwich generation, where they're busy with their kids and their parents, when we tell them, you could do it 5 minutes a day, you could do it an hour a week, when they realize they have the flexibility, they're so much more willing to opt in. As we had one client say, oh, if I can do this 10 minutes a week and really lock in what I need to lock in, I'm more than happy to do this. So it takes the defensiveness away and the resistance away, which is really our goal, to make this as easy and doable as possible.
I guess I want to speak to the advisor's experience here, because I'm realizing we haven't spoken to that we see the advisor as a support person and as the quarterback. So when the advisor and the client are working on what's my action plan, the advisor will help the client think through what resources can we glean, can we make available from inside the family or outside, like through Tamarind, for example. Where can they find the resources to find webinars or podcasts or whatever it might be that are unique to that individual's learning activities, to their action plans, and that are up to date. So We don't expect advisors to be experts in any of these learning activities, more facilitators and quarterbacks.
And to reach out to people like Tamarind who have so many resources available for the stages and the activities we're talking about.
Well, and I can imagine it's overwhelming to advisors to figure out the plan, right? And certainly most advisors are in technical professionals, right? Maybe finance, investing, accounting, legal. So who is necessarily all things psychology, marriage and family therapy? So not necessarily knowing everything about ages and stages. This wonderful 10 by 10 matrix gives the clarity around, I don't have to like figure out what at different ages and stages for my client is appropriate. I can look to this guide. I can find something off the shelf, and then I can know that I know my client. I know what they like or don't like. We can have a conversation and we can work together, and they can say, hey, this feels like me, or what do you think? Or, what kinds of tools do you think would be helpful for me to learn up or are appropriate? So I couldn't agree with you more that they're a facilitator, but they're also like an issue spotter, right? They might know, hey, your daughter's getting married. Maybe this is a good time to talk about joint accounts. Like, are you going to have one account when you're married? Or are you going to keep separate accounts? So let's talk about what that looks like with your, when you're married, right?
Yep.
And
Yep. And I think
about the human capital. So our clients, we all know as advisors, our clients want us to know them, not just for their money, but for who they are, the internal competencies. Doesn't mean as advisors, you have to know what to do with the internal competencies, but your client wants you to know, right? And they want to be seen and heard. And that is the added value for advisors with their clients, is the people listening all know.
Well, I know that this book is just one of the learning assets that you've created. Tell us more about what you're doing with advisors and the training that also you've developed.
Well, thank you. So we decided after completing the book that we wanted to create an e-learning course, an online course that advisors could take so they could learn within a few hours what this is about, hear a lot of examples of how to use it, and how to go about implementing it themselves. So we have it available through our website. If you're interested, visit our website, the 10by10learningjourney.com. We want to spread the word about the importance of learning. And this is a very proactive approach. And I guess I want to mention one other thing that's come out of this that advisors have told us, which is that because the clients are selecting what they want to learn, the clients are also telling you what matters most to them and what directions they want to go. So it turns out to be a very interesting unexpected discovery process. A lot of ahas for both the clients as well as the client families, as well as the facilitating team around them.
And the beauty is, it's what matters most at my stage in life, not your stage in life, not what you think I should be doing, what you think the stage is, but what matters in my stage of life, whether a teenager, tweenager, young adult, or elder. And again, I keep underscoring that it normalizes what the developmental patterns are of one's age. And we don't always know. We just don't always know.
Yeah. And what I also love is your 10 by 10 matrix, honestly, is so validating to so much of the learning we've built, because it complements, like, there's things that we read in your age and stage that we're like, oh yeah, we have some of those financial literacy activities. Like, we have some of those readings, we have some of those tools and activities and exercises. So, we definitely don't cover a lot of the content and the ages and stages that you are identifying that there's need for teaching and instruction. So that's one of the things I do love about your whole learning roadmap, is that it's from, real young little itty bitties all the way up to elders. And so it's a call out to the whole universe, from education, universities, to brick and mortar, to camps and mentoring, and psychologists and psychiatrists, and all of the above, right? For a call to learning resources. But I know that there's a lot of complementary activities that we too can bring to bear. And then obviously we have tons of free resources that might fill the gap for some of those as well.
But thank you for saying that, because I think that would alleviate some of the concerns advisors have, because there are people, Kirby, like you out there that have a breadth and scope of resources that they may not even know is available, which they don't have to do it. They just have to know the phone call to make.
Yeah. And like you, I mean, we're not scalable, but there are like programs, and there are consultants, and there are definitely lots of opportunities to find really good coaches, and there's really good programs with peer learning. I mean, there's some really cool activities and opportunities if you just have one member of your family that wants to learn with sort of another age group that's like them. So I definitely put out there that, reach out, and you never know, we might be able to help, find your people. We might be a resource right for you as well. And, at this stage, I put out to advisors that this is an invaluable book and invaluable training, that it will differentiate you, right? One. And two, if you really want to keep your clients for the long term, this is what you need. This is going to keep them, part of your relationship. This is enduring, right? This is what I would call stickiness, because unfortunately, if you don't learn with them and grow with them, they are likely not to stay with you long term. So I love having you both. If there's some closing thoughts that you have about this wonderful learning roadmap that you'd want to leave advisors, what would be one or two things that come to mind?
I think the fact that it's customized, it's efficient, it's effective, it takes 20 minutes. It's, a lot of clients say, I didn't think of that. This is fun and stimulating. It's a discovery process. And the rising generation, most importantly, have the freedom to choose what they want to learn. So it actually supports their individuality. It supports their independence. It supports their self-reliance. I think what I love about it, having a business background, I so believe in deliverables and outcomes. And this is a real shortcut. It's like the Cliff Notes version of any book. You don't have to read all these books for every age and stage for your children or your parents. Just take the 2 pages of Cliff Notes that will tell you everything you need to do. So in a time of life where we're running around and we have so much to do in so little time, I do call this the Cliff Notes version, to give you information about you and what's important to you.
Well, I think a lot has been said here. I think one thing I'd add is that when it comes to resources, one of our colleagues who's using the 10 by 10 came up with a very simple and powerful way that he had the family members in a family meeting do the 10 by 10, different generations. And then he paired them into cross-generational dyads, where one generation would listen to the other and then work with each other to figure out the action plan. And it was very cool. And it was a beautiful way of connecting the family across generations, mobilizing internal family resources, and also mobilizing regional resources, since the families themselves often know stuff that other folks don't know in that region. So there's many ways in which this can be made real. Also, we have a part of the book in which the 10 by 10 or elements of it can be used for families to determine what they want to learn as a group, for group learning experiences, where they're all given particular charts and they all pick the top 3 things they want to learn as a group. So we're very excited about offering this learning opportunity. And I think you said something very important, that we believe that successful family wealth consulting is an ongoing process. And we have to find a way of forging a relationship that's meaningful to our clients over time, and that really lets them lead where they want to go in their lives. And I think that's my parting words on the 10 by 10.
Beautiful.
Other than thank you, Kirby, for this opportunity. We're thrilled to collaborate with you. We really appreciate doing this, and we're very passionate. I hope you can tell. We're very passionate about what we're doing, and it has a lot of legs, has a lot of life. So thank you for allowing this to happen.
Yeah, well, it is a delight. It's an honor. So much respect. You have given so much to this field and made such a contribution to the thought leadership. So it is a real honor to have you here today. And you will have lots of opportunities to click on the links to get to the training, to get to buy this book, which you should have on your bookshelf if you don't already, and to learn more about Joan and Stephen, their works. They've published a ton of other great, wonderful books that you should pick up if you don't have it already, and learn more about money, meaning, and choices, because they have, again, done so much for the field. So thank you so much for being here today on the Tamarind Learning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kirby. Thank you very much.